The Clintons just told James Comer, "You want this fight? Let's do it on camera." Bill Clinton is getting defended by Donald Trump, and somehow this is all happening in the middle of the Epstein mess and an election cycle. Welcome back to the comment section with Thomas Paul. Today we're talking about why the Clintons are suddenly daring Comer to drag them into a public Epstein hearing, and why that move is a giant flashing warning sign for anyone paying attention to power, markets, and what might be coming next. Here's the setup. For months, House Republicans on the Oversight Committee have been chasing allegations and connections. Epstein, powerful people, flight logs, all the usual phrases that light the internet on fire. According to Hillary Clinton, her side has already talked to the committee under oath, behind closed doors. She says Republicans ignored it, moved the goalposts, and turned accountability into a distraction show. So she basically tweeted, "Enough. If you want this fight, let's do it in public. Cameras on. No more shadow boxing." Here's where things get interesting. Usually, politicians avoid testifying publicly like it's a tax audit. When someone says, "Put me under the brightest lights you've got," that's not confidence. That's strategy. Because a televised hearing is not about truth. It's about who controls the clip that goes viral. I learned this the boring way. In college, working part-time at a local newspaper, I saw how the same economic story could look totally different with a different headline. Same facts, different frame. That's when I realized politics isn't just about what happened. It's about what people think happened. And that's exactly the game here, framing the Epstein conversation before it frames them. But it's even getting worse. Right in the middle of this, Donald Trump goes on air and says something almost nobody expected. It bothers him that people are going after Bill Clinton because he actually likes Bill Clinton. Not the sentence you thought you'd hear in 2026. He basically says, "Bill was nice to me. He got me. He understood me." That is not a legal defense. That's vibes. But it does tell you how weird and tangled this elite ecosystem is. These people fight on TV and then compliment each other in interviews. And here's where things take a step further. You've got three overlapping stories now. 1. Oversight Republicans, led by Comer, want to keep the heat on Epstein connections, especially when it embarrasses political enemies. 2. Hillary Clinton is turning around and saying, "Fine, do it in public with us in the room," daring Comer to call what might be a very risky bluff. 3. Trump, the guy who usually loves throwing gasoline on Clinton drama, suddenly easing off Bill, which may be less about kindness and more about self-preservation, because if every powerful person who ever crossed paths with Epstein is guilty by association, that net catches a lot of people. But then the unbelievable thing happened. This story stopped being just about who flew where and turned into a preview of how future investigations, including around AI policy or housing and affordability, might get weaponized. Think about it. If public hearings become the default political warfare tool, every big topic that touches your portfolio can get dragged into theater. AI regulation? Instead of clear rules for businesses, we get 8 hours of grandstanding clips for social media. Housing affordability? Instead of structural reform, we get gotcha questions at 11 p.m. on C-SPAN. As an investor or just someone trying to not get crushed, you need to watch how they fight, not just what they say they're fighting about. Here's where things get interesting. Let's break down the core message in Hillary's public challenge. She's saying, "We cooperated. You ignored it. You kept moving the target. So either stop or let's do this out in the open." Translated, if you keep punching, we're going to drag you into a ring with cameras and lawyers and public opinion. And we're not afraid of that. That's not just a legal posture. It's a political warning. Because if Republicans overplay this, they risk looking like they're abusing oversight to settle scores. And retaliation goes both ways. If this becomes the norm, every time one party gets power, they'll feel justified in weaponizing hearings, subpoenas, and investigations against the other side's donors, allies, and maybe business leaders. But it's even getting worse. Imagine you're a CEO of a big tech, real estate, or financial company. You want to invest in AI or build housing or push for deregulation. But now you have to ask, if I show up at the wrong fundraiser or donate to the wrong campaign, Do I end up on a committee slide deck in 3 years? That uncertainty is toxic. Markets can handle good news and bad news. They cannot handle random news. The Epstein story is terrible on its own, obviously. But in Washington, people also study it as a blueprint for how to turn any scandal into a loyalty test. And here's where things take a step further. One of the reasons this mess hits so hard is because, deep down, people don't trust institutions anymore. You hear under oath now and half the country rolls its eyes. When I was about 12, my parents lost most of their savings because they trusted a bank advisor who sounded very official and very confident. No villains, no explosions, just bad incentives and blind faith. The dinner table got very quiet for a long time. That's what this kind of story does to regular people. You look at the elite names around Epstein, the flight logs, the denials, the political spin, and you think, if they're lying there, where else are they lying? But then he said this unbelievable thing Democrats are saying. Let's go public, full transparency. Republicans have to decide, call that bluff and risk a circus, or stay behind closed doors and get accused of hiding. For retail investors, the angle is simple. Chaos is a policy. The more time Congress spends on symbolic hearings, the less time they spend on boring things that actually move markets. Zoning reform, tax rules, AI liability, lending standards, energy permits. In my early 30s, I invested in something boring and unfashionable while everyone chased hype. It didn't look smart on Instagram, but over time, it worked. That's why anytime I see politicians obsess over spectacle instead of structure, I know this is bad for planning and good for volatility. Here's where things get interesting. Quick note on how you're even watching this. This video was created with Fludge.io, the same system that powers this entire channel. If you're thinking, I'd love to run a YouTube channel like this, but I don't want to be on camera, that's literally what it does. It researches, writes, designs, and publishes with an AI avatar. You stay in control, you review, you hit publish. If that sounds interesting, check out Fludge.io after this. Back to the warning baked into the Clintons' move. If this goes to a public hearing and it turns into pure theater, that tells us something very important. Both sides believe the battle is not about law, but about narrative. And in a narrative war, every future issue, AI, housing, crypto, healthcare, becomes another episode of the same show, but it's even getting worse. If you're building a portfolio, you need to assume, number 1, policy signals will be noisy and delayed. Hearings first, actual rules, maybe eventually. Number 2, retaliation risk rises. The party out of power will promise its base. Give us the gavel, we'll hold them accountable. That's fun until your sector is the one in the crosshairs. Number 3, trust is the rarest asset. Companies and leaders that can say, here's what we're doing, here's why, here's the receipts, will stand out more than ever. And here's where things take a step further. You don't have to pick a team here to see the pattern. Elite circles closed ranks around Epstein for years. Now that the fallout is finally landing, everyone is scrambling to say, I was there, but I didn't know. So when you see powerful people suddenly begging for a public hearing or suddenly defending someone they used to attack, don't just ask, are they good or bad? Ask, what are they trying to protect and what are they trying to distract from? That's the question that actually helps you navigate what's coming next. Financial disclaimer. Nothing in this video is financial, legal, or tax advice. I'm not your advisor. I'm a guy on the internet with a low tolerance for nonsense. Always do your own research before you invest. If you made it this far, I want to hear from you. Do you think a public Epstein hearing with the Clintons on camera would reveal real information or just create better campaign clips? Drop your take in the comments. And if you want more calm, sarcastic breakdowns of how stories like this hit your wallet and your vote, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next episode of the comment section with Thomas Paul.